we have our sleeper movie of 2021. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Tomorrow War, the new Amazon Prime Video film starring Chris Pratt in the lead role. A family man is drafted to fight in a future war where the fate of humanity relies on his ability to confront the past. So going into this movie, all I knew about was the movie poster and that it starred Chris Pratt. I avoided any trailers, and I'm here to say I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. And I think if you're a fan of the sci-fi or action genre in general, you'll have a blast with this movie. At its core, the plot is pretty simple and it deals with time travel, and all of those aspects have always been of interest to me. First, I wanted to mention how Chris Pratt is just the leading man in Hollywood nowadays. He's one of those movie stars that brings that charisma to every single movie he's in, whether it's the Jurassic franchise or Guardians of the Galaxy, and he brings that same energy to this movie. He's a family man. We get to see a lot of his acting chops, though, not just from an action standpoint, which we know he's capable of doing, but with his relationship with his daughter, which is the heart and soul of this movie. And the father-daughter relationship in this movie reminded me a lot of Ant-Man and Cassie Lang's relationship in the MCU. And I have to give major props to, I'm just going to put her name up on the screen because I don't want to mispronounce it, but she is a star in the making, no doubt about it. The chemistry that she has with Pratt is great, and when it comes to the action, there are some awesome action sequences. The effects are actually pretty great, and I think that the creatures are terrifying on screen. They remind me a lot of A Quiet Place, but I know a lot of people have already made that comparison. The second act of this film is the standout for me. The first act is setting up what exactly is the war. It's setting up the rules of how the time jumps work in this film, and then we see the second act. It's a ton of action. It has a lot of Aliens vibes, which I'm sure people have been talking about, but also Predator, and these are all sci-fi action films that are obviously inspiring this movie. And I will say that I think the movie unfortunately peaks in the second act because there is a phenomenal sequence that's about 10 minutes long, and the stakes are out and high, the emotions are all there, and then the movie just flatlines a little bit after that for a while. And because of the way they are playing with time in this movie, the third act is a little lackluster compared to the epic second act that we get. Now, I'm still a fan of how this movie ends. I think that it has a very nice bow and wraps everything up. But the third act compared to the second act is a step down, and I think you always want to end your movie on the highest note possible. So the fact that the movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes, and there's a good chunk of time between the second and third act, kind of this plateau period, I'm going to call it, it doesn't really have the impact that it should. And J.K. Simmons is also in this movie, and he's one of the best actors working today, but I feel like in movies and TV shows anymore, he's barely in the movies he's in. They always mark it, oh, J.K. Simmons starring in this. He's barely in Justice League, he's barely in Defending Jacob, and he's barely in this movie as well. Now, when it comes down to the story structure, there's a lot of predictability, which is a minor flaw that I have with the movie. When a certain character pops up on screen, I immediately went, oh, that's their role in the movie. And then when another character popped up before it even explained anything, I was like, okay, I know who that is. And there are certain instances where I was like, okay, they're probably going to call back to that early on, but I will say the end had a few twists and turns that I didn't fully see coming. With every time travel movie, I feel like there are continuity errors. And at this point in the review, I'm actually going to give a spoiler warning because I want to talk about something that doesn't make sense to me, but I will put a timestamp to where you can skip where it will be spoiler free. So at the end of The Tomorrow War, we see that Chris Pratt has successfully eliminated all of the aliens before they can start the Tomorrow War, setting up a new future for himself. But the only thing that I have an issue with is when he does make the jump to 2051 and he sees his older daughter, she talks about how Chris Pratt had a life and how he ended up divorcing his wife and abandoning his family, and then he actually ended up getting killed in a car accident. So the only thing that doesn't make sense to me is he's in 2022, he sees his 9-year-old daughter, and he jumps to 2051 and sees his older daughter. So he comes back after a week. That's the amount of time that he has in the future. So based on that original timeline where he abandons his family and divorces his wife, how is it possible for him to have gone back? In the timeline that we see, he leaves and he goes to the future. But apparently the daughter, who's older, says, well, I lived my whole life and you abandoned me. So Chris Pratt must have had to go back after his week allotment of time in the future in order for him to have abandoned. Now, how is that possible? Because he only goes to the future once. That's the issue I have, and it's a big continuity thing for me. Like, how could Chris Pratt's character have gone back and died in a car accident if in the timeline that we are presented with in the film, he only goes back one time and he changes the future? If he were to go back from the 2051 time period with the information he has that he's going to die, wouldn't his future have changed anyway? That's the only part that doesn't make sense to me, is how Chris Pratt was around to really impact a childhood that the older daughter would remember It just doesn't make sense to me, and I could be getting too deep into it. When it comes to time travel movies, there's always things that I'm looking for to see how it flows seamlessly, and what I love about Endgame with time travel is they said to hell with all these rules. The past is the past, but it's not going to affect the future. When you get into the Back to the Future, the Terminator 2s, where you go back in time and it can impact the future, that's when it gets really tricky for me, and I know how every movie tackles time travel differently, so this had some gray areas for me. But welcome back if you skipped the spoilers. I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts now. The Tomorrow War is a fun action movie. It's a summer blockbuster that you want to see. I really wish I got to see it on the big screen. Chris Pratt brings this charisma. He's got a great father-daughter chemistry, and the plot itself is interesting enough. It's nothing that's going to push the boundaries for the sci-fi action genre, but if you just want to shove popcorn in your face on your couch since it's not in theaters, or if you want to have an escapism fun time, I highly recommend The Tomorrow War. There are some continuity issues in my opinion when it comes to the time travel aspects, and the movie can be fairly predictable. I'm not going to critique this movie too hard because it delivers exactly what I wanted, a fun time. It is a little too long in my opinion, but hey, if you know me, I say that about every single movie. It could have been 2 hours. The third act does drop off a little bit, but overall, it functions very well, and my heart was warmed in the end, and this is just a fun time. So if I had to give this movie a score, I would go 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, or a 7 or 7.5 out of 10. Really solid movie that I had a lot of fun with. Nothing to write home about, but it's one of the more fun movies I've seen this year. So yeah, that's going to do it for my review of The Tomorrow War, the new Amazon Prime original film. Have you guys seen the movie? If so, let me know down below. Definitely hit the like button. Comment your thoughts on the movie. I want to have a discussion down there. I actually do recommend this one if you haven't seen it. If you want a new fun movie with action sequences that are pretty enthralling, I recommend The Tomorrow War. But thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for a ton of content coming soon. I'm going to have a video almost every day in the month of July, sometimes 2 a day. I know we got Black Widow in a week, so I can't wait for that. But thank you all for watching. Definitely consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.